To begin with, we have Huda Alsahi from FAO, who will be speaking about bridging digital divides to eliminate digital inequalities and fostering inclusive rural digital development. So welcome, Huda. Over to you.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everybody. How's the energy in the room? Good. I'm glad to hear that after the tea break. So yeah, my name is Huda Alsahi, and I'm a social policy officer. Can you hear me? Yes, I'm a social policy officer working in the Rural Transformation and Gender Equality Division in FAO-HU in Rome. And together with my colleague, June, who will be giving the other presentation later on, we decided to organize this session, which is entitled Towards Digital Inclusion for Rural Transformation, which is actually the name of a new report that we together produced with the Institute of Development Studies at the University of Sussex. So we acknowledge that this will be a great opportunity for us to share with you the latest insights and the key summary findings from that report. And I'm also very glad to be with you here today in the beautiful Nairobi. So to begin with, when deciding how do I frame this presentation, it took me some while. Then I decided to pick up some summary points of major discussions, thinking processes, debates, and argument that we had in our division. So basically, when we speak about digital transformation, we acknowledge that the ongoing digital transformation in the government, economic, and social sectors has great potential to benefit smallholder farmers and benefit rural communities around the globe and to achieve various SDGs, including SDG 1, SDG 2, SDG 5, among others. However, despite the potential, digitalization doesn't automatically ensure inclusion, and rural residents and marginalized group could benefit the most, but at the same time, they are at a high risk of being excluded due to the existing digital divide, and this topic was touched upon by several participants in this conference. So this basically creates some sort of paradox, right? So this leaves rural development actors sometimes unsure of the best approaches to promote digital inclusion. So at FAO, we had so many questions when we speak about digital transformation and development, starting with, will digital advancement promote inclusivity and benefit the most marginalized groups, or will they widen the digital divide, further isolating the vulnerable groups, including rural women, indigenous people, persons with disabilities, older people, among others. So these are the questions that we had in mind. Moving forward, this was the justification of us developing this report that I introduced before. As I said before, it's a joint effort between FAO and IDS, and basically it has several objectives in mind. So starting with, the report seeks to encourage global development actors, aid organizations, and practitioners to move beyond the binary conceptualization of the digital divide and adopt a more comprehensive and a holistic approach to address digital exclusion within the programming and beyond. Also, the report provides an overall introduction of the ongoing digitalization efforts across various sectors, emphasizing the risk of digital exclusion. It also elaborates on the digital divide between rural and urban residents, with particular emphasis on the vulnerable groups, which we mentioned. So basically, our objective is to help rural development practitioners and decision makers to address the paradox of digital transformation. And I think we are in a good platform to launch it to you. So in a nutshell, because I will not go in depth, because I would like you also to have the opportunity to read the report later on. The report provides an overall of digitalization trends in the agri-food sector and present the various different use cases of digitalization, starting with smart farming, farm management, access to knowledge and advisory services, moving to finance and governance and intelligence. The report also uses like the latest data regarding the trends of the adaptation and uptake of digital solutions. So starting off, I'm gonna mention like key finding and insight that were included in the report. The fact that rural areas are home to 80% of the global population living in extreme poverty, with the majority engaged in agriculture, despite rural areas accounting only for 44% of the overall world population as of 2020. Regarding the number of digital agriculture solutions in low-income countries and low and middle-income countries, we noticed that there is a trend, there is a momentum of like increasing upscale of digital solution. So they increased from 209 in 2013 to 946 as of March 2023. And focusing on sub-Saharan Africa region, we noticed that it has launched the most digital agriculture solution, as you can see in the graph, with an overall of 538 solutions. So this represents, a need in this continent. Moreover, we found that the large proportion of users are smallholder farmers, accounting for 48% of the total targeted beneficiaries, while this is not the case with the other regions. For example, in the Southern Asia region, we noticed that smallholders farmers account less than 33%. This is also another key findings. We also used a qualitative research that was conducted. So for example, we noticed that in 34 countries, there is a trend that urban residents were more likely to use mobile phones and internet on a regular basis in comparison to rural residents, with 48% of the urban residents reporting more frequent usage. And nearly 300 million Africans are living more than 50 kilometers from a fixed broadband connection. Moreover, there is a study that we found which reported that only 19% of individuals has access to both smartphone and a computer. So when we use these two devices as a proxy, with 9 countries reporting less than 10% of the people having access to both mediums in rural areas. And you can see that in the graph which is attached. So basically in the report, we introduced a framework which seeks to explain digital inclusion. It starts with the fact that now we are really involved and we're obsessed with digitalization, right? So there is an overall ongoing trend with societies increasingly undergoing digitalization efforts, while offline options become more and more fewer and they diminish. So individuals face growing expectation to engage with technology, and this is done in a manner that doesn't take into consideration the fact that they are elderly people who not have the like adequate digital skills. We notice this also with the trend with after COVID-19, when a lot of services moved online, while there was no attention to the offline option. So basically in the report, we highlight the fact that digitalization itself is not inherently responsible for digital exclusion. It is actually the manner in which digitalization is implemented without taking into consideration the needs of marginalized community. And this goes also in combination with other factors, which are the absence of offline alternative and the persistence of the digital divide. So together, these factors lead to digital exclusion. So this is basically the framework which is identified in the report. Moreover, this is a very interesting slide because also it tackles upon a question that was raised earlier today about how do we define digital like exclusion, digital divides. So basically in the report, we thought to move beyond the binary conceptualization of the digital divide, which basically refers to the access, the differences in access between those who own and those who don't, right? We acknowledge this is important, but it is binary in nature, and there are different levels that we need to take into consideration when we design digital inclusion initiative. So as you can see from the figure here, the first level of the digital divide includes basic access, gaps in usage, so how often like people use mobile phone or the computer, gaps in actual ownership, and we notice this with the gender. So in a lot of countries, women borrow the devices instead of owning them, right? A barrier to gaining access, electricity. So we acknowledge these divides, but they are the first level of digital divide. So basically, we're making the case that there are also differences within the group who are categorized as internet users or device owners. So basically in like the second level of the digital divide, we basically try to assess the quality of access, the after access barriers, right? The speed, the fact that some people have limited data, while other people, most likely in rural areas, they have limited data, and as well as the difference in the skill. And the third level of the digital divide refers to the overall context, and we refer to them by the structural inequalities. So they are actually the differences in access to human capital, social capital, social norms, and also the local institutional capacity. So basically, we see even among users with similar access to technology and digital skills, evidence shows that individuals who are better off and have greater access to offline economic resources can extract actually more value from technology itself compared to less privileged users. So we wanted to put that up front. And this is a quick, like also data, which shows the, like the different data points. So the first graph shows the percentage of individuals who use the internet by urban rural areas. So this shows binary, this shows binary access, while the other one, it's refers to meaningful connectivity. So like the manner in people are connected and takes into consideration the like the second level of the digital divide. And yet again, we can see that in rural areas, people are like less connected there. So I will not be long because we have another presentation from Digital Green and then my colleague June, but we promise you the report is not negative. So we are trying to be upfront and we propose a framework to address digital inclusion. So basically, we have another framework which basically emphasizes that the persistence of the three levels of the digital divide between urban and rural areas, men and women, and better of a marginalized group has significant implications for FAO and its partners in their effort to improve the prospect of rural communities and low-income countries. So basically, we propose to have a combination of options, which is offering offline participation options and having a more gender-responsive and marginalized group a responsive approach to digitalization, as well as addressing the root causes of the digital divide. And this together can help to promote digital inclusion efforts. And with that, I conclude this presentation. And you can see also the barcode to access the our report as well as the contact information. Thank you so much. And now I handed it over to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, June. So our next presenter has to decline due to health reasons. So we will move on to Beryl and Agengo from Digital Green. She'll be speaking on reaching out to farmers and catalyzing digital transformation changes within the agriculture sector.
Thank you. Just to correct, she's Huda, right? Not June. Yes, no problem. He'll be the next one. I will try be slower now. In the morning, we saw the video on the chatbot, right? And I had a minute. This time around, I'll go a little bit in depth, but I will present more on what exactly are we doing over and above the chatbot. So in the morning, it was more technical, the chatbot and how it's running. Now I'm going to take a step back and just cover the background on what we are doing. Digital Green is known largely for doing extension services and with videos. We are evolving, times are also evolving. And the best thing about example Kenya market is that the chatbot is starting now. In 2 years, it won't be the in thing. Everyone would have had a chatbot and everyone would be trying to do something that is different. But we still need the policy, we still need the environment. The bottom line remains, like it was said in the morning, we must still help the smallholder farmer. Okay. Extension services across the different countries that we work in. We currently work in 4 countries, which is India, Ethiopia, Nigeria, and Kenya. Extension services in all those 4 countries are very different. But we all know that extension services in all those 4 countries is a different problem. Some places extension may be working, but the digital tools are not there. In Kenya, the digital tools are there, but the extension officers are very few. So how do we ensure that we have we are improving the extension services, whether it's just helping the farmers figure out how to access the right content or how to build their capacity on the extension services that they do. We know that getting the right localized actionable extension is an issue. If you go to an extension officer in Mwea, they will tell you that they've been working with the Japan team, and the Japan team, because JICA, how they do rice services in that ecosystem can be implemented in Kenya, but it has to be tweaked to fit the Kenya Mwea area. So even for them, they say, yes, it is extension, but it must be tweaked to fit the current ecosystem. Then there's the gender equity bias completely across the board. In India, in Ethiopia, the women are very strong in gender. In Kenya, it's a very thin line. We've actually seen from our user behavior analysis, it's almost like 50-50 on gender. But what is the bias across the women ecosystem, and how do they even ask the questions, like I was saying in the morning? In Kenya, extension officers, I know for a fact in Nyeri are approximately 112 for the whole county, which means one is serving anything from 600 above numbers. It's the same thing with Ethiopia, it's the same thing with Nigeria, it's the same thing with India. How do you ensure that also we have enough extension officers supporting the ecosystem? Conventional extension is also very expensive. How we currently do extension is very expensive. And this has been documented, fact, researched on, enough PhD papers around it. So it has to be improved. We initially focused on videos. So it's a video done by a local farmer to actually, and they're trained on how fast to do the video. And then it has to be the prime time for the right service or the right farming method so that it's documented. And then the farmers would go back at some point, sit and look at the videos. And that way they're able to get the knowledge without necessarily having to sit each time with the extension officers. We have supported more than 6 million farmers. We have over 100,000 extension officers across the different countries, and we've seen income improve based on the facts that extension has actually, there's a touch point on extension. We know for a fact that video extension has brought down the cost of extension services, but we are not there yet. $3 is still slightly high. How do we bring it lower and lower, but also how do we build the ecosystem around extension services? Then now we moved to the chatbot. And to say it has been a fantastic ride, even for the Kenya ecosystem. I've sat down with the CEC for Nandi, and he's very good with digital. I've sat down with extension officers. And when we onboard them into the chatbot, the first thing we normally tell them is, what's your value chain? They'll pick dairy, they'll pick coffee, they'll pick tea. And we'll tell them, what was the last question while in the field you are not so sure of the answer? Please ask the chatbot. And when you get the response, do you think it is the right response? And then I want to say the bias on digital pops up, but it's going to give us everything and anything. We tell them, nope, give it a try. So they will ask a question, and then they'll try and verify, is this the correct answer? Reason being, they've had a bias of asking questions on the internet and everything is thrown at them. So the trust around digital is also very borderline for all the farmers, for all the extension officers. Our model has been, for Kenya, we started with extension officers, but there's a gap. So we moved into the lead farmers or farmer promoters, which is a different set. But like Huda was saying, it becomes very key on which tool, which mobile device do they have? Is it their device? Was it borrowed? When they have the app on the phone, in the morning it was said, do they want first to install Facebook, social media, or once they're done with the app, do they want to delete because they want the normal things? So even the use of the handsets become a question. So if it is their own device and they're willing to ask these questions, do they trust the answers? And then that trust has to be built. First, we trust the answer, then we're taking it to the farm. And we've seen that on user behavior. The feedback we've gotten on user behavior is about efficiency. The farmer had a question, the extension officer said, I'm calling you back. I will call you back becomes 3 days later. Now they can ask that question. And when they're in doubt, they will post the question on their normal social media groups, their WhatsApps, and ask, do you think this is the right answer? Then their solutions are becoming faster and faster because now they can ask the right way. The strength of our chatbot is in the local dialects as well. So for Kenya, we are moving into Kikuyu. We have English and Kiswahili. For India, there are 7 different dialects, and the same applies to Ethiopia. We've seen this, and the extension officers are saying that the farmers still call them, but the questions are now a different level. It's not the basic questions they used to ask, and this is improving as we go. We have rolled out the chatbot to 12,000 extension agents across the 4 countries. We have 6 languages in Africa and India, and we've seen that per se, there's no gender gap in usage and in retention. It's 48, 52, 49, 51, like there's very little gender gaps across the 2 gender teams. What are the guardrails for bot safety? We've known everything about ChatGPT. There needs to be a guardrail, right? Or else it will have, I was told by the technical team, it's called hallucinations, where it will answer what it thinks you may have asked. So we have put, in a way, some guardrails across so that there's some safety net for the answers that come through. And we've also worked on improving the hallucinations. There's the generation of, so it's a bias between the generation of the content we have, improving the content we have consistently. What I was saying in the morning, we need more content so that when the bot is not so sure about, has it been fed this information before, where else can it get the correct answer and not create an answer for the farmer? But they're still learning. I'd say that for a fact. It's a chatbot, so they're still learning. And the more we get on content, the more we get, and the content doesn't have to be the research PhD. It has to be quality and quantified and accurate, or else garbage in, garbage out, and the farmers do pick it up. There's also the risk of, if I try this on my farm and it fails, what happens? So the guardrails are very key for us. Like I've said, the extension of agents still remain in the intermediaries, where the question was asked, they got an answer, they call the extension officer and say, I tried the chatbot, this is the answer I have, can I proceed? So that still helps us with figuring out, is it a hallucination or is it a fact? And the farmers still do check. I'll give an example of a farmer who tried to grow cabbages on a farm using advisory from the chatbot and our experience. We also have thumbs up, thumbs down, which is a feedback modality. That was in the video in the morning. It's a form, if you do a thumbs down, it will ask you, tell us why you think this is a thumbs down. Remember, our target has also been extension officers, so they kind of know what they're asking. And if they get an answer they're not so comfortable with, they can do a thumbs down, gives us feedback on how then to improve the particular question. 57% of our users report improved quality of life within the first 45 days. They have tried it. We've done user behavior, we've done research, we've done feedback sessions in person, anonymous, and they say, yes, they have tried and they've seen it. So the example of the farmer in Nyeri, she has a small, I want to call it a kitchen farm because it's not an eighth. She decided she will do cabbages and she will use half her farm on the normal way she has done cabbages. She needs the cabbages to feed her farm. She took half that plot and decided she will follow what the chatbot will tell her. And her first feedback was, the chatbot spacing is wrong. And we told her, try it. We've agreed we are trying, right? And it's not full risk. You can imagine what happened 7 weeks down the line. She kept telling the field officers, tell Beryl to come back. I want her to see the difference. The difference with her farm with the chatbot is the cabbages were heavier and they'd had enough space to grow. Her normal method, there was no space for the cabbages, so they were squeezed and small. She wanted me to see the experience of, I have tried it and I've succeeded, and now we use her as an example to the other farmers. Remember, she's a lead farmer. So now she can tell the farmers, give it a try because I've tried and I've seen it works. all she was doing that was different was more cabbage heads, smaller space, to allow the cabbage to have space to grow. Most of the questions asked on the chatbot has been on pests and diseases. So we're having a conversation with Kabi. Again, can we get more on plant doctors giving us content on pests and diseases? That remains an underlying factor for Kenya. I was asking our M&E team that what happened in early May. I know what happened in early May. The rains were too much. There was a drop on the boat, but the farmers, when we did the phone surveys, were saying it's raining too much, so they don't have enough time to go to the field, but the rains were too much. For that was the bottom line. So when again do these users actually use the chatbot as to ensure that we're even building the confidence around them. Our current costing for using the chatbot as compared to the videos and conventional extension services is lower, but I'll put a disclaimer. We have to work on this for an extra year to verify that cost. That is now 3.5. What we are doing on video and what we're doing on the chatbot, our costing is currently very, very low. I will stop there. I will say, go to farmer.chat, find the chatbot and try. Remember, thumbs up, thumbs down. If you like the answer, if you don't like the answer, thank you.
Thanks, Beryl, for that informative presentation. Now we have June from FAO, speaking about practices and insights to improve digital inclusion in rural transformation, FAO perspective.
Hello, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, dear colleagues, also some audience online. Thank you for joining us here. First, I would like to say, our big pleasure for IRI to organize this in ICTforAg conference in Nairobi. It gives us this opportunity to be here. So this is actually the first reflection before I move into my presentation. So I think we are here in the right place at the right time with the right people. So we would like to exchange and also to work with the practitioners here in Nairobi, considering how to improve the digital inclusion, as Huda already presented from some key findings of our report. So I think today is my honor to share some, let's say, actions from FAO, the Food and Agriculture Organizations of United Nations. And also, I would like to hear also from you to see how to strengthen the collaboration and how to move into actions jointly with all the practitioners on the ground. So let me skip this slide by introducing myself. My name is He. I'm the policy officer with Huda in the same division, rural transformation and gender equality. So before I make a summary on some FAO's action and also some recommendations, I think there are two recaps I would like to say. First, so back to our origin for this report, as Huda mentioned about, we have two important questions for us to always keep in mind, because although we are in the rapid development, a digital era, but we have to ensure the digitalization can benefit the last mile groups like the women, youth, indigenous peoples, elder groups on the ground. So that's why we ask ourselves about if digitalization has these advancements, to benefit, to promote the inclusivity. And also the second question is there any potential risks of isolating further about these left behind groups? So considering the fast development of digitalization. So that's why we would like to say, based on this question on why, we have to think about how and what from FAO's perspective, and also as the international organizations and development agencies. So the second recap is to see, let's look back of the framework in our report. So there are connections between the three pillars as three main courses for the digital exclusion to the solutions for the digital inclusion. So everybody, I think we have to think about how we can use this concept definition of digital inclusion also to contribute to the SDGs, because you can see from here, there are many SDGs and also sub-objectives in this framework for the 2030 agenda. I mean, that we can benefit from the digitalization. And now let me say something about IFAO's action, 2 dimensions. First, something in the cloud, because like the data, we cannot see it, but data is very important for this time as a golden asset. That's why there are so many people here today talking about the data, how to use data, how to deal with the data confusion, how to make data. As I asked in the morning, how to make integration of our different data set. So in IFAO, we have the IFAO digital service portfolio. Maybe my colleague Gerard, who is sitting there, can introduce more afterwards. So I think these integrated data sets, so IFAO published this application. You can download it from IFAO's website, because this is a kind of like integration of about IFAO's data sets. So, you know, IFAO has many data from different agriculture sectors. So how to make it useful. So that's why our colleague from the information division developed this and put all this data, trying our best together and to make it more accurate to serve the people through the information sharing, early warning, and some market price system. And also we have some actions on the ground. IFAO has now the 1,000 digital village initiatives. So that's some actions in IFAO's 5 regions and also in some specific countries. So here I can show you 2 examples from 2 regions. For example, in REU region, is near Middle Asia and Eastern Europe region, we have different villages. So under the framework of digital villages, which means they develop their concept of how to promote digitalization in some specific geographic scope in rural communities, and how to use different technologies. And also in African region, I think my colleague Ken from our region office will join tomorrow in the hybrid session to present some key findings. But here I would like to highlight, for example, here in Kenya, our Kenya national office here, they have been collaborating also with Kenya office to develop the integrated data system. The name, I think, is Kiamis, right? It's hosted by Carlo, I think. So this integration, this piloting work is a kind of how to engage public sectors as well as private sectors to see how to make the data more comprehensive and how to make it more useful. So here I also have 2 specific cases. The first one is, I don't want to go deeper, but the first one is like Beryl mentioned about how to use the social media as some different modality to deliver the digital services and how to strengthen the engagement of youth as the young entrepreneur to develop their business and make it sustainable. And the second one is a talking book. We are piloting it in Uganda, and I assume it will be replicated in other regions. This is a kind of solution in the middle, because between the online solutions and offline solution, the talking book is something after a certain period, the technician will bring it back to renew the information. Also, they would like to evaluate some data from the talking book to see the frequency of its use and to see what knowledge the local beneficiaries need, I mean, for their future, for their planting and harvest. So now let me summarize, because in this report, you will find more information and also recommendations. Here, I just would like to highlight some. I summarize it into 5 pillars. So first, in general, I think like IFAO and other organizations, we have to collaborate. I mean, to have the engagement of all the multi-stakeholders to have the common understanding and awareness about the importance of digital inclusion to move forward jointly by setting up some joint force. And the first recommendation is to have some normative framework guidelines and survey on digital inclusion. So this is what I would like to say, because here, like in the morning, when I heard about the case from Tech for her from India, I think many practitioners, many private sectors are working on the ground by providing many innovative and effective solutions already. So that's why I said we are in the same place at the right time. So here there are 4 recommendations. So you can see from the highlighted words, because from the beginning, we have to have some digital inclusion narratives to address the 3 factors which lead the digital exclusion by providing some thinking or framework to address the digital inclusion in order to promote the digital inclusion. And second, we have to do a baseline or analysis of offline market and supply chain, which I think is very important, although we are providing digital solutions, but we should remember, remind ourselves, there should be a large group of people who still needs offline solutions for them to use through in-person communication, and also some, let's say, the feature phones, and also through some physical centers like the talking books, who can support them. And the third is to see how to have some disaggregated data for us to collect the data and to monitor the data. And also we need to have the digital inclusion and the digital divide training. The second pillar is to have this gender and marginalized group responsive approach. So here, I think everybody here, as we talked in some previous session about the gender and the inclusion and also youth and the inclusion, it's very clear for us to have this lens or this perspective for the whole process of designing, implementing, and evaluating the programs. And the third is to ensure the offline participation, as I mentioned several times before. It's kind of like a package on the one hand and also on the other hand. And the fourth part is to promote the access to technologies, solutions, but also we have to pay attention to address some after access barriers, like the infrastructure or some literacy. And also we need to follow some localized knowledge and the culture to ensure we can talk with the people, we can hear from their voice, and also we can engage them and we can empower them. And the last recommendation is for the long term, we need to reduce the structural inequalities to lead the digital divide, which means we have to use the policy lens, the governance perspective, and to address, let's say, some structural barriers for the people to be inaccessible for the education or for through some social norms or some disparities, as mentioned several times by other colleagues. So I think this is for long term, but we should have this kind of like foreseeable future that we have to move from now for a better future and to ensure leave no one behind in this digital world. Okay, I stop here. Thank you very much.